let me tell you something that a lot of people don't want to talk about. But it's the truth of relationships, and truth don't care about your feelings, it just is what it is. Ladies and gentlemen, let me break something down for you that most people don't fully understand until it's too late in their relationship. And by then the damage is already done. Words are not just words. In moments of emotional closeness, words become impressions, and impressions become attachments. And attachments become the foundation of how a man sees you long after the moment has passed. Now listen to me carefully, because this is where a lot of women lose their power without even realizing it. When you are in a moment where emotional walls are down, where vulnerability is present, where connection feels real and strong, whatever comes out of your mouth is not just being heard, it is being stored. It is being recorded in his emotional memory. And men may not always talk about it, but they remember how a woman speaks when she is closest to them, when she is not performing, not pretending, not trying to impress anybody, just being real. That is why timing and tone matter more than people think. You can't say the right thing at the wrong time and it lands wrong. You can say something simple at the right moment and it changes everything. Because in relationships, impact is not only about content, it is about emotional placement. Now I need you to understand this clearly. When a man is emotionally open, he is not analyzing you like a checklist. He is feeling you. He is absorbing your energy, your tone, your reactions, your presence. And in that space, your words can either create peace or create confusion. They can either build trust or plant doubt. They can either deepen his attachment or slowly push him away without you even noticing it happen. And here's where wisdom comes in. A woman who understands emotional timing doesn't speak out of anxiety in those moments. She doesn't start bringing up insecurity-driven thoughts. She doesn't start testing him, questioning her worth, or demanding emotional reassurance in a way that shifts the energy. Instead, she understands that emotional closeness is a powerful moment of influence, not control, not manipulation, but influence through emotional intelligence. Because let me tell you something about men that most people misunderstand. A man may not always remember every conversation, but he remembers emotional weight. He remembers how safe he felt when he was vulnerable. He remembers how you responded when he was open. He remembers whether you made him feel understood or judged. And those memories don't fade quickly. So when you are in those close, connected moments, your words should carry calmness, not chaos. Strength, not insecurity. Assurance, not desperation. Because the energy you bring in those moments becomes part of the emotional blueprint he builds for you in his mind. And I want to be very clear here, it's not about playing games. This is about understanding human psychology and emotional connection. A secure man is not built by pressure. He is not built by fear. He is not built by emotional control tactics. He is built by connection that feels peaceful, respectful, and emotionally steady. When a woman speaks from that place, something happens inside a man. He relaxes. He leans in. He doesn't feel like he has to defend himself or escape emotionally. Instead, he feels like he can be himself. And that feeling becomes addictive, not in a toxic way, but in a deeply human way where he associates you with emo. Chanel stability. Now let me go deeper with this. There are women who think that being memorable means being loud, dramatic, emotional, or overly expressive in every moment. But real emotional impact often comes from the opposite. It comes from the woman who knows when to speak and when to let silence do the work. It comes from the woman who doesn't fill every emotional space with anxiety, but instead brings clarity and calm energy into it. Because in those intimate emotional spaces, your voice becomes more than sound, it becomes identity. He starts associating your tone with comfort, your words with direction, your presence with grounding energy. And over time, that association builds attachment that is not easily replaced. And this is why emotional maturity matters so much in relationships. A woman who is emotionally grounded does not panic in moments of closeness. She doesn't try to force outcomes. She doesn't use emotional intensity as a weapon or a tool. Instead, she understands that real connection is built when both people feel safe enough to be honest without fear of losing control. So when I tell you that words matter in those moments, I'm not talking about rehearsed lies, NES or scripted responses. I'm talking about emotional awareness. I'm talking about knowing yourself well enough that you don't let insecurity speak for you when your heart is open, because insecurity will always rush you. It will always make you say too much or the wrong thing. But self-worth slows you down. It makes you intentional. It makes you precise. It makes your words land with meaning instead of noise. And here is the truth that many people learn the hard way. Attraction is not only built in the beginning of a relationship. It is reinforced in the quiet, intimate, unguarded moments where real connection is tested. And in those moments, a woman's emotional intelligence becomes her strongest asset. Because a man may be drawn in by beauty, he may be impressed by energy, but he stays where his emotional experience feels steady and real. He stays where his mind is not confused. He stays where his heart is not constantly in conflict. And that stability is often created by how you show up when things are emotionally close and real. So understand this, your words in those moments are not small. They are shaping something deeper than the moment itself. They are shaping memory. They are shaping attachment. They are shaping how he sees you when you are not even in the room. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that a lot of people hear but don't really understand until life forces them to sit down and reflect on their relationships. Men are not as complicated as people think, but they are deeply emotional in a way they don't always know how to express. And one of the biggest truths about men is this: he may forget your exact words. He may forget the details of certain conversations, but he will never forget how you made him feel. That is not theory. That is not opinion. That is human nature. A man can meet a woman and have 100 conversations with her, but what sticks in his mind is not the structure of those conversations set, is the emotional experience attached to them. Does she make him feel respected or criticized? Does she make him feel calm or anxious? Does she make him feel understood or constantly judged? Does she make him feel like he could breathe or like he always had to prove himself? Because at the core of every man, no matter how strong he appears on the outside, there is a deep need for emotional safety. He wants a place where he can be himself without feeling like he is on trial. He wants a space where he doesn't have to perform, where he doesn't have to over-explain, where he doesn't feel like every mistake will be held against him forever. And when he finds a woman who gives him that feeling, something shifts inside him. Now listen to me carefully. This is where many relationships either grow or collapse. Because a lot of women think that holding a man's attention is about appearance, about effort, about constant communication, about always doing something extra. But in reality, the strongest emotional glue is not activity, it is feeling. If a man feels peaceful around you, he will keep coming back. If he feels tension around you, he will slowly pull away. If he feels appreciated around you, he will open up. If he feels constantly corrected or misunderstood, he will shut down emotionally, even if he stays physically present. And here is something very important to understand: men are highly sensitive to emotional energy, even when they don't show it. They may not always articulate it, they may not always analyze it out loud, but they feel it deeply. They feel the difference between a woman who brings peace into a situation and a woman who brings pressure into it. They feel the difference between being emotionally accepted and being emotionally evaluated. So when I say men remember how you make them feel, I am talking about the emotional environment you create around him. That environment becomes the memory he associates with you. Think about it like this: if every time a man comes to you, he feels drained, stressed, or like he has to defend himself, even love will struggle to survive in that environment. But if every time he comes to you, he feels relaxed, seen, and emotionally safe, even in difficult moments, he will associate you with comfort, and comfort is one of the strongest emotional anchors a man can have. And let me go deeper with this, because it is not just about the good moments. Anybody can feel good during easy times. The real difference is how a woman makes a man feel during imperfect moments. When there is misunderstanding, when there is distance, when there is stress, when things are not perfect, that is when emotional memory is formed the strongest, because a man will remember whether you became chaos in his storm or calm in his storm. He will remember whether you added pressure to his already heavy mind or whether you gave him space to breathe and think clearly. He will remember whether he felt like he had to hide parts of himself from you or whether he felt accepted even while still growing. And that memory shapes his attachment far more than any surface level attraction ever could. Now, I want you to understand something powerful. When a man feels emotionally safe with a woman, he doesn't just enjoy her presence, he starts needing her presence in a different way. Not out of dependency, but out of emotional association. His mind begins to link her with peace. His nervous system begins to relax around her. His guard begins to lower naturally when she is around. And that is not something you force. That is something you become. Because emotional impact is not about what you say once. It is about the pattern of how you consistently make someone feel over time. If you are consistent in creating emotional safety, respect, and calm energy, he will remember that even in your absence. And that memory will pull him back more strongly than any argument or persuasion ever could. But if the emotional experience is inconsistent, one day peace and X day pressure, one day understanding, next day emotional conflict, then confusion replaces attachment. And when confusion enters, emotional distance usually follows. So the question is not just what did I say to him? The deeper question is what emotional experience did I leave him with? Because at the end of the day, men don't chase perfection. They chase emotional experiences that feel right. They don't stay because everything is flawless. They stay because something about being with you feels like home in a world that is always moving too fast. And that is why understanding emotional impact is more powerful than trying to control behavior. You cannot force a man to stay, but you can become the type of woman whose presence he remembers as calm, grounding, and real. And when that happens, you don't have to chase anything. You don't have to convince anything, because memory does the work for you. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that most people don't fully realize until they've been through enough relationships to finally see the pattern clearly. Confidence is not loud. Real emotional power is not loud. And the women who truly hold lasting influence over a man are not the ones who are constantly chasing attention, validation, or reassurance. They are the ones who understand emotional control, self-respect, and inner stability. Now I need you to understand this very clearly. Confidence and emotional control are not about acting like you don't care. That's not strength, that's avoidance. Real confidence is when you do care, but you are not ruled by fear. It's when you can feel deeply without losing yourself in that feeling. It's when your emotions exist, but they don't control your decisions, your words, or your worth. And let me break something down for you men are highly observant of emotional energy. They may not always say it out loud, but they can sense when a woman is grounded versus when a woman is emotionally unstable. They can sense when she is reacting from insecurity versus responding from self-worth. And that difference changes how they engage with her over time. Because a man will test energy without even realizing he is doing it. He will pull back slightly to see how you respond. He will get quiet to observe your reaction. He will create space, not necessarily to hurt you, but to understand your emotional stability. And in those moments, your response says everything about your confidence. If you panic, if you overreact, if you start chasing answers immediately, if you start overthinking every detail out loud, that communicates emotional dependence. But when you remain steady, when you remain calm, when you don't allow temporary distance to shake your entire sense of value, that communicates emotional strength. And here's something powerful: men respect women who respect themselves even in uncertain moments. Not because they want control, but because they want peace. Nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to build something long-term in emotional chaos. A man may be attracted to excitement, but he commits to stability. Now let's go deeper into this truth. Emotional control is not about suppressing feelings. It is about managing them with intelligence. There's a difference between feeling hurt and reacting in a way that destroys your own value. There's a difference between feeling disappointed and letting that disappointment turn into insecurity-driven behavior. A woman who understands emotional control feels everything, but responds with awareness instead of impulse. And that is where real company, confidence is built. Because confidence is not what you show when everything is going right. Confidence is what you maintain when things feel uncertain. It is what you hold on to when you don't have immediate answers. It is what you express when you don't need constant validation to feel secure in yourself. And let me say this clearly: when a woman is emotionally stable, she becomes emotionally attractive in a different way. Not because she is trying harder, but because she is not easily shaken. That creates a sense of safety for a man. And emotional safety is one of the strongest foundations of real attachment. A man will always be drawn back to the woman who does not make him feel like every interaction is a crisis. He will always remember the woman who did not turn every moment of distance into emotional chaos. He will always respect the woman who did not lose her identity just because he became temporarily quiet. Because emotional control communicates maturity, and maturity builds respect. Now listen carefully, this does not mean you tolerate disrespect. This does not mean you ignore your own needs. This means you handle your emotions in a way that preserves your dignity. You did. On chase, you don't spiral, you don't abandon your self-worth just because someone else is uncertain. You stay grounded. And that grounding changes everything. Because when a man experiences a woman who is emotionally grounded, he feels it. He feels the difference between someone who is emotionally reactive and someone who is emotionally balanced. He feels the difference between someone who depends on his attention for stability and someone who already has stability within herself. And let me tell you something important: what men find most unforgettable is not perfection. It is emotional presence without pressure. A woman who can sit in her own worth without constantly needing proof of it becomes unforgettable in his mind. And this is where emotional control becomes powerful. It removes unnecessary noise from the relationship. It removes drama that destroys connection. It removes insecurity that pushes people away. It replaces confusion with clarity. And clarity builds attraction that lasts longer than temporary excitement ever could. So when I talk about confidence, I'm not talking about ego. I'm not talking about pretending you don't care. I'm talking about knowing who you are so deeply that temporary uncertainty does not shake your foundation. I'm talking about responding, not reacting. I'm talking about choosing your words instead of letting emotions choose them for you. Because at the end of the day, a woman who is emotionally in control of herself becomes emotionally powerful in any relationship she enters. And that kind of power does not come from controlling a man, it comes from controlling yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you about something that sounds simple on the surface. But in real life, it separates women who are emotionally drained in relationships from women who are respected, valued, and remembered long after they are gone. And that is this. Self-respect is not something you announce, it is something you demonstrate. Now, hear me clearly, self-respect is not loud. It does not need constant explanations. It does not need emotional speeches every time you feel insecure. Self-respect is shown in how you respond when you are not being fully valued. It is shown in what you tolerate and what you refuse to entertain. It is shown in the boundaries you quietly enforce without needing to threaten them. And let me break this down. Own for you in a way that makes sense in real relationships. When a woman truly respects herself, she does not overstay in situations where she is constantly confused. She does not keep giving unlimited access to someone who only gives limited effort. She does not keep explaining her worth to someone who continuously ignores it. Not because she is angry, but because she understands value. And that understanding changes everything. Because here is the truth, most people don't want to face people treat you based on what you consistently accept. Not what you say you deserve. Not what you post online. Not what you promise yourself late at night when you are emotional. But what you actually allow in real time, in real behavior, in real situations. And men especially understand energy through consistency. A man learns very quickly what a woman is willing to tolerate. He learns how far he can go without consequences. He learns what kind of behavior still gets access to her time, her attention, and her emotions. And once that pattern is established, it becomes the standard of the relationship. Now I need you to understand something very important. Self-respect is not about playing hard to. It is not about games. It is not about manipulation. It is about alignment between your standards and your behavior. It is when your actions reflect your worth without you needing to constantly remind people of it. And here's where many women struggle, not because they don't know their worth, but because emotions sometimes overpower boundaries. You can know you deserve better, but still stay in situations that are below your standard because feelings are involved. You can recognize inconsistency, but still accept it because hope is stronger than clarity in that moment. But self-respect requires something stronger than emotion that requires decision. And let me tell you what happens when a woman truly stands in her self-respect. The entire dynamic shifts. She stops chasing clarity from someone who is intentionally unclear. She stops over-explaining herself to someone who is not listening. She stops trying to prove her value to someone who has already shown she is optional in his priorities. Instead, she begins to observe behavior, not promises. She begins to respond to actions, not words. She begins to match energy instead of overgiving it. And that shift is powerful. Becoming. AWS, people feel when access to you is no longer automatic. People feel when your presence is no longer guaranteed. People feel when your emotional investment is no longer unconditional. And that awareness changes how they treat you. Now let's go deeper. Self-respect also means emotional discipline. It means you don't react to everything immediately. It means you don't lose your dignity in moments of frustration. It means you don't send messages you later regret just because you felt ignored for a few hours. It means you don't abandon your standards just to avoid losing someone who is already not showing up consistently. Because losing yourself to keep someone else never creates love, it creates imbalance. And imbalance always leads to resentment. A woman who has self-respect understands something very important. If a man values her, she will not have to convince him of her place in his life repeatedly. She will not have to compete for basic attention. She will not have to constantly question where she stands. Clarity becomes natural, not forced. And if clarity is not present, she does not stay in confusion, hoping it turns into commitment. Because self-respect does not wait in uncertainty forever. It observes, it evaluates, and it decides. Now, I want you to understand this carefully. This is not about becoming cold. This is not about shutting your heart down. This is not about refusing love. This is about protecting your emotional energy so that when you do invest, it is respected, not taken for granted. Because the truth is, when a woman respects herself, she teaches others how to treat her without saying a word. Her boundaries speak. Consistency speaks. Her decisions speak. And people either rise to meet that standard or they quietly fall away from it. And sometimes that is exactly what needs to happen. because not everyone deserves unlimited access to your time, your emotions, or your presence. So understand this self-respect is not just a relationship principle, it is a life principle. It determines the quality of connections you allow, the peace you maintain, and the emotional stability you build for yourself. And when a woman truly lives from that place, she does not need to chase being chosen. She becomes the standard.